Hi, my name is Jack Shannon. Welcome to St. Athanasius Reformed Catholic Podcast. Today, I just wanted to do a quick video because we've been moving and I haven't been uploading on Wednesdays. It's been kind of a chaotic mess. It was a video I saw of this pastor who interrupted this children's reading at a library, and it was a transgender person, and it was a drag queen, transgender something, reading to these little kids, and the pastor comes in and he says, "I'm Pastor so and so, and there's no such thing as transgender people," and yeah, I appreciate what he's doing. I think that's great, I guess. But as I was watching it, I just started thinking about how weak the church is, how we don't have any real authority. We don't have power, because I was just thinking, how many weddings has this pastor done where the former spouse was still living, and Jesus says that these second and third and fourth weddings are adultery. And G.K. Chesterton, and he has this little pamphlet on divorce that I'm slowly making my way through. He says the interesting thing about a remarriage is that precisely at the point that a person is making that second vow, they're breaking their first one. So they're making a new one, and they're breaking their first one. And the church is filled with this kind of thing. And it's the reason, from my perspective, it's the main reason why we don't have any real power. It's why the culture is slipping away from us. We're in Fort Collins, Colorado, and we moved just to a different part of town. But there's churches everywhere. I've seen churches everywhere here, and there's no lack of them. I mean, Lutheran churches, Episcopal churches, non-denominational, which is really just crypto, which is just Baptist. Baptist with a cool website. Pentecostal churches, I mean, they're everywhere, and we have no influence. We have almost zero power. I mean, it's interesting with Trump. Trump is basically a modern Constantine. I mean, obviously it's not as exaggerated. We're not being persecuted the same way that the early Christians were, but Constantine was a theological moron. He didn't know what was going on, and the church welcomed him into these important councils, and the people who are surrounding Trump now it's not the best that Christendom has to offer, but it's people who are supportive of Israel, which I do think is important. It's people who do believe in the gifts of the Spirit, and that evangelical demographic, which has so much wrong with it theologically, they do see the strength of Trump. They're able to look through all the noise and see that Trump is someone who has power, has strength, which I guess other groups of people like Reformed, or pretty much like the higher church you go, the more nerdy and academic you get, and they don't really care about power as much, or they do, and it becomes much more subtle. But so just watching this video, and this guy, the only thing he can do is disrupt a library reading to kids and say transgenderism isn't real, while the reason why that person has that kind of authority, why society has collectively said, yeah, these gross drag queens can read to our kids, is because the church has abdicated all authority with sexuality, and it's specifically with divorce and remarriage. It's institutionalized sin within the church, and it's like the Israelites taking Jericho and Ai. When they took Jericho, God said, don't take the devoted things. Achan took some devoted things. They go to take Ai. So Achan, somebody in their camp, went against God's commands. The Israelites go to take the next city, Ai, and they get demolished. They get destroyed. And then Joshua and the elders rightly are like, why do we get destroyed? And it's almost like God's response is almost like he's annoyed with them. He's like, get up off the floor, take care of Achan. And they killed Achan, they killed his family, everything. They burned him, put him under a pile of rocks. And the new covenant version of that, the new covenant violence, is excommunication, discipline. The church doesn't exercise this, particularly with people who are divorced and remarried. It's just never ending, the amount of excuses for this kind of thing. And I see it more and more, the more that I interact with Presbyterians specifically, who they subscribe to the Westminster Confession of Faith, which I think is actually a really great confession. But there are things that I would disagree with it. But the main thing would be their section on divorce and remarriage, which actually wasn't accepted by the legislature in England. You can look it up. I don't remember the details, but when they submitted it to the powers that be, they were like, we're going to take this stuff out. And I mean, that makes sense, because in England they retained just the traditional teachings on divorce and remarriage. But the main thing I wanted to say was this video of this pastor. Maybe you'll see it. It makes me think about our culture wars, and it's like the stuff with the baking the cake too. I saw this LGBT person on Facebook. Her name is Lizzy the Lezzy, so I'm assuming that's short for lesbian. And she posted this picture where they said that they weren't going to cater weddings to second, third, and fourth marriages. And they put this up thinking it would enrage traditionalist Christians like myself. But I'm like, hey, I'm right there on board with you. You shouldn't serve those weddings. But a majority of Christians, because their friends and family are all divorced and remarried, they got to come up with some kind of explanation for why this is okay. And all while the culture is swirling down the drain. And if you look at the covenants in the Bible, and Paul applies those covenants to those who have been grafted in, us Gentiles, we are the new Israel. And some people are going to say, you're a supersessionist, aren't you? No, I'm just saying that all of Israel is all of Israel, meaning everybody who believes in Jesus is the heirs of Abraham, as Paul says in Galatians. And then in Colossians, I think he even says we're the circumcision. So, I believe that we are brought into a new kind of Israel, or Israel is expanded. Israel is the church, the ecclesia in the wilderness, as Stephen says, the church in the wilderness. It's all the same thing. I get kind of annoyed with these debates on Israel and the church, although I do acknowledge that there is some kind of particularity with ethnic Israel, but that still does get into a lot of other strange questions, like, is that Ashkenazi Jews? Is that Ethiopian Jews? Is that, I don't know. There's tons of questions that people who are like rabidly for Israel, I've never heard good answers about. I mean, I am for Israel, but I view them as our apostate older brother. But anyway, so we are losing the culture, and we have these pathetic displays of pushing against the culture, like some pastor going in and disrupting this reading, and I guarantee you his congregation is filled with people who are in adulterous marriages. And what we need is men with backbones who are going to lose everything, give up everything, and follow Christ with this. And I think if you legitimately are seeking the Holy Spirit on this, which I don't think that that's what most people do. I think that they're like, oh man, these are some interesting things. Let me go find all these other resources that already defend my position. Instead of getting on your face before God and fasting and praying and asking for the Holy Spirit to give you illumination in His Word, and then you can go read what other people say and stuff. But then it'll just appear like white noise, and you'll see these men as being cowards and really perpetuating a lot of iniquity and the downfall of Western civilization. So if you want to do something about the fall of the West, you need to take Christ's word seriously, Paul's word seriously about executing new covenant violence. And that means excommunication, that means non-association, it means confronting the sin and then breaking yourself off from it and giving those people over to Satan. And it's through that I believe we will have victory, that the church will be victorious again. All right, have a good one. Bye.
against the wall.